transforming little Melvin into a hideously deformed creature of superhuman size and strength. Melvin became the Toxic Avenger.
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes as normal. Today I'm going to have an interesting conversation with a good friend of the channel, contributor. We like to talk about comics. We have a lot of common interests. Maybe we don't always agree on everything, but I really respect his opinion. He has a great YouTube channel himself. How you doing today, Chase?
Man, I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing excellent. It's great whenever we like to talk about indie stuff and like that. I thought maybe we talk something a little bit more serious. Something that impacts things. There's always this one of these. There's a lot of buzzwords out there, and one of them is toxic fandoms. And toxic fans, and then the fans want to come back and talk about toxic creators. And I thought maybe we should talk about toxic fandom. In your opinion, do toxic fans even exist?
My mind has changed over time about this. Coming into it, I heard a lot of things about how creators were telling people horrible things, telling them to die by an IED and all kinds of stuff like that. And I do know that that's happened in the past. And I looked at all of those past tweets that people had collected, and I was like, this is horrible. And these people are calling fans toxic. And it really emboldened me to be obnoxious at multiple times to multiple creators for no reason other than what they said to other people. And, I look back at it and I feel like I used to be kind of on the verge and on the line of that, where I would excuse behavior from fans, but I would look at creators and point the finger and say, but look at what you did. And I do feel like that it's possible to be toxic. I don't feel like it's what a lot of creators think it is, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm with you, because I agree with you. I think there are toxic fans out there, but I think there's this weird misconception that there's all these people just gather together and they create all these like plans and stuff, and they go out and sabotage people and try to ruin their lives. I don't think it's that organized. Do you?
I don't at all. We hear so much about the past and where people have said that movement of Comicsgate was a harassment campaign. And I don't see that at all. I saw it as a group of people that were really upset at the way things were going in comics, the way things were going in the way that creators would talk down to fans and push their politics and say multiple very, very cruel things. And it became a symbiotic relationship instead. And so when we're talking about toxic fandom, I think that it's a full circle. You kind of, what is it? Newton's law, energy can't be created or destroyed. And so you just have this full circle of people being incredibly cruel to each other, from the consumers back to these creators that were emboldened to say what they wanted. And then the fans would say what they wanted. It would escalate from there. And the fans, since they're kind of on the same side, quote unquote, they would kind of tend to ignore what other fans were saying from their peer group and just look at the creators and say, look at you monsters. And the same is for the other side, with the critics saying that about fans. And I feel like that's where, that harassment campaign or that toxic fandom kind of came from. But things can escalate to the point where it does become toxic. And that's absolutely the case.
It's interesting. You brought up Newton, Newton's third law: for every action, there's an equal but opposite reaction. I firmly believe that. And I think that's, kind of like karma. I think if you put bad things out there, you're going to receive bad things in return. I think for the most part, if you're positive and you try and have good interactions with people, even if you have a bad interaction, I think the other people that you've been friendly with or you've had good interactions with will actually come in and defend you, and they will ward those people off. So I think a lot of the toxic behavior, it can never be on one side. Mm-hmm. It always has to be both sides, because
that's right.
No one's, if you put that toxicity out there, but if you respond with it with professionalism or of kindness, you're not going to get it back. But if somebody puts that toxicity out, you, whether it be a creator or a reader or a customer, whoever lobs it first, if you come back with that negativity, it just keeps going back and forth, and it ends up being an endless cycle of negativity and toxic behavior on both sides.
That's absolutely right. I saw I saw from this one post on Twitter, it was some individual, I don't even remember what their name was, but they were, a member of the war campaign, of course, and they just laid into Tom King. And, they were telling him how horrible his Batman run was and, what a piece of crap he was. And, he responded back, F you, and I was like, well, you know what? If you're putting that out and you're calling someone just cruel names for the way that you didn't like them writing a book. Now, don't get me wrong. I did not like Tom King's run on Batman, and I'm very pleased that James Tynion is writing it now. But look, if you put that out there, you're going to get that back from creators, and then you'll just confirm your own suspicions that, yeah, they want to be cruel to people who are cruel to them first.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think everyone, if you've been subscribed to the channel, I'm not a fan of that. I will tell you this: if Tom King, came into my comments and said, you know what, I don't appreciate your take on my comic, and I don't think you're being fair, I would absolutely have to be like, I can see exactly where you're coming from. From your perspective, that might be correct.
Yeah, absolutely. If I ever had a creator stop in and say, look, I really didn't like what you said about my comic book, I would say, well, I appreciate your comment, but it just wasn't for me. So, all I'm doing is really criticizing the writing. And I'm sure you're a fantastic person when it comes down to it. It's not about that. It's all about preferences. And, I talk about writing a lot. And so I want to now give a fair critique on what writing is. And I'll say this, I mentioned before, I was getting into that toxicity. Look, I started out my channel on a really negative note, right? And if people don't know what I was doing to start out,
roasting, right?
It was literal roasting, because I would take comic books and I would burn them with a flame torch or propane burner, and that's fairly toxic when you look at it, and it's right on the verge of real cruelty, but it's not a personal attack. So I think that very, very real toxicity is when you cross that line and you start attacking someone or their family. And I think that happens a lot, and burning comic books is really stupid, but it isn't quite over that line, in my opinion. It's riding that line, and it's still a very negative way. And I got that negativity back. I guarantee it.
Yeah, it's interesting. We'll talk about someone associated with Comicsgate. With Ethan Van Sciver, I think that he got a terribly raw deal with people going at him and telling him he was a Nazi. Calling him all kinds of names, attacking his family, trying to put his personal business out there. And, I think it became so much with him. He started coming back at it, but then I think he got overwhelmed and kind of just started associating anybody that said, anything negative about him must be saying something that negative. And he ended up, changing, the opinions that some people had about him, because so many people are coming out. So I can't imagine how a lot of creators like a Tom King can handle all those personal attacks. It's got to become overwhelming. Absolutely.
Yeah. I look at all of these folks that are getting ridiculed personally from each side like that, and I'll say it, the fandom is very divided right now. Just like everyone knows, if people are on Twitter, if they're looking at how people interact with each other, on both sides, it looks like everyone's starting to block each other. And it does feel somewhat political in a sense, because it feels like, just like the rest of the country, it's left versus right. And, the toxicity, like I said, it's literally a circle. It goes right back around. And, it's got to be tough to look for creators on both sides, whether they are liberal or conservative, or what their viewpoints are. And they look at these fans and they make just these value judgments based upon their experiences, and they let it reflect their future instead of looking at individuals and judging people on a one-by-one, case-by-case basis, which I think is a lot more positive, you know?
Yeah, you make blanket assumptions, because we've already said, Tom King, you get 3 very personal insults. They all have a hashtag Comicsgate on the end of them. So anytime you see that hashtag Comicsgate, that person must also be a toxic individual that is looking to belittle me or belittle my work. So everyone associated with that, must be that way. And it's the wrong way to go about but I can understand how he could come to that conclusion if you're being inundated with it.
That's absolutely right, and I'll tell you all of this, and it's not just the fans, it's the circle of extremely cruel behavior from all kinds of individuals, creators, fans alike, that has made me look at this entire movement of Comicsgate and simply say, look, I really don't want anything else to do with this. This isn't for me. I feel as though it's just about, looking at comic books, enjoying what we want to read, having fun with them, and hey, if we don't like something, we can criticize it, and that's okay. I think that in a lot of circles, it's too positive, and then in other circles, it's too negative. So there's got to be a balance there somewhere. And, for critics like us on YouTube, I think that we're trying to find that balance, and I hope that other people come with us. I know that, there's a lot of other channels out there that are being as balanced as possible. Just like yourself, I really love Perch's channel, Comics by Perch. And I feel like he's going in a really great direction as well. And that's the kind of mentality that I want, where, the toxicity can end with us, with whoever, whether they're a creator, whether they're a fan. They can stop it by being kind in return.
Yeah, it's interesting, because maybe 18, 24 months ago, Mark Waid, I think he is a toxic individual. I don't think he treats
yes.
well. I don't think that he treats his peers very well. I think he's a bad person. There's a couple other guys that are kind of high profile, your Dan Slots and stuff like that. So all of a sudden you start making the assumption that anyone with the Marvel associated with their name or their work just must be a terrible person. Marvel only hires terrible people. That's what their brand is. And and I got bogged down with it myself, where I was like, why would I even listen to this guy? He wrote for Marvel. He's obviously a crazy lunatic or something like that. And it's easy when you're in the moment and you're surrounded by that to get caught up and to think that, and you start changing your mindset, and you stop giving the people the benefit of the doubt. You stop judging them on their own actions and their own words, and you start lumping everyone together. And I think that's when you can be very toxic. And that's, when the mob starts to form, and the mob is something that it's pervasive, in society now that we're all connected through the internet, social media. That mob mentality is just, it is breaking fandoms. It's one of the reasons that all these fandoms are at each other's throats, is because no one wants to talk anymore. They just want to talk about how terrible the other side is, rather than trying to find some common ground. Because, if you're flying, the Comicsgate flag, or you're flying the Marvel flag, DC, we all do have one thing in common that we all can't deny. We all love comics, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why can't we just talk about that? Because we don't all have to like the same comics, but hey, I love this comic. What comic do you? But we never try to find that common ground anymore. We all just want to talk about or concentrate on the things that divide us and what we hate or dislike about the other side.
That's absolutely right. Yeah, I think that it gets too easy to fall in line with our peers and just do what other people are doing in the time. And I think that, if we pay attention to what's going on, then we'll really see that there are some just very well-behaved, kind individuals that care about their fans and care about the characters that they're writing in all of these companies, DC, Marvel, every single comic company, Image, all of them. And it just like you said, we really are all individuals, and just to list a few, I'll have to say, And I'll say right off the bat, if people could act more like who is it, Williamson, right? Is that the gentleman that's writing?
Josh Williamson.
Yeah,
Batman.
absolutely. And Jonathan Hickman is very funny and sarcastic, and his
Deprecating guy.
Yeah, he sure is.
Brian Hill.
Brian Hill, yes, absolutely.
Scott Snyder, Sean Gordon Murphy. There's a lot of great creators out there that are really kind and appreciative of fans.
Absolutely. And even when they get comments on their Twitter that are negative, they seem to just completely ignore them, and the toxicity ends with them. And I wish that the same would go for fans as well, because we can all do that together. That can be a common thread, that we can just talk about our preferences in writing and characterization, and what we like about a story, what we like about specific art, and it doesn't have to be mind-blowingly cruel, when we refer to each other. And I think that's the biggest statement that I could possibly make is don't get caught up in that mob mentality, like you were talking about, Yeah,
like I said, it goes on both sides. Like, I think most people know I'm not a fan of the war campaign, but there are some people that are flying that flag that, I've had interactions with them before they had it or since they've had it, and they're not bad people, Do I think that the whole totality of the group and some of the stuff that they do is right? No, I'm fully against that. But on a personal level, they've never done anything that I've ever witnessed, and I think there are good people on that side too. Even if I disagree with a lot of the antics that are associated with it, there are good people there, and it's wrong to just start judging everybody just because of affiliation.
Yeah, I agree with that as well, because I definitely look at the very few very crass individuals within that movement, Comicsgate, War Campaign. They're definitely very similarly grouped together at this point. And I look at it and I say, well, what would help keep this behavior at bay if I ignored it? If I ignored the ones, and I know that's crazy, but lending energy or putting a focus into something that you don't like literally gets more of that, in a sense. You look at people that have always been protesting war consistently, and nothing against that. I'm definitely pro peace, but you look at people, they'll say no more war, and they have all these signs that say war on it, and they're putting all of this focus into war. Well, what do you think you're going to get if you're just completely honed in on that one thing? You're going to get more of it, And so I like to say, hey, let's just ignore this as much as possible. And I know that's not an answer long term for trying to fix other people's problems, but I feel like that's the biggest way that I can fix my own self. And I don't know, that's the only way that I can give back, is by changing the way that I interact with people, because I can't change the way other people interact. They're always going to do them. So I just need to do me. That's kind of what I've come to that conclusion about after stepping away, getting away from all of this, the Comicsgate side, the War Campaign side, and just realizing, hey, there are great people from every side, whether they're politically liberal or conservative, or they have, really intense perspectives about things and the way that things should be written. They don't like the newer characters. They love the newer characters, I follow so many people that would be considered very far leftists these days, and I love my interactions with them as well. So it's all about, I think, how we approach it, and I feel like we can all, to be honest.
I think what you're talking about is like blanket statements where people, I think there are pot stirrers that are putting things out there to draw you in to be a part of the drama and try to bring that toxicity into you. But you do see some people that are getting attacked unfairly, and sometimes I do feel the need to go in and say my piece. Like I think Doug Ernst is a good example. He was being attacked unfairly. There were some lies going around him. I don't really want to be a part of all that. But when I see something like that, I put out a blanket statement. It's like, hey, if you're one of the ones that are attacking him, unfollow me. I don't need to interact with you. What you're doing is wrong. So I think it's important to let people know where you stand, but being able to remove yourself to the point where you don't get personally so involved that you can't get yourself out.
That is just a fabulous point, because I feel the same way about Doug Ernst 100%. Very upstanding guy, willing to have a conversation, willing to release every single private message he's had with people to show that he's never meant any harm to them. That's literally his intent. And he wants people to know that he just wants to create comics and make fans and friends along the way. And, the drama is never ending with some individuals. And he's done a very good job himself to ignore it, just kind of like I'm talking about. But you're absolutely right. Whenever it comes to defending yourself or the values that you have, making a statement like you did, and I loved that tweet. I think that was very important to make, to say, look, this isn't something I want to be involved in. This feels defamatory, and I don't want to participate. That is that's the opposite of toxicity. It's standing for your values and beliefs, and you couldn't have been more correct when it comes to all of that. So yeah, appreciate you bringing that up, because there's a huge distinction between standing up for your values when they are morals and creating toxicity by literally jumping down someone's throat to tell them that they're not a good writer. There's a big difference there.
Yeah, there's other things that we could have covered. We're winding down. There's the doxing. There's the online harassment. You'll see a lot of that even between fellow readers. It seems like there's a weird never-ending war, and like everyone's siding up because the mob's more powerful than the individual. Me personally, I have my friends, and I don't have to agree with everything, but I'm on my side. I'm on the side of the fans, of the common guy that wants to have a good perspective and enjoy the fandom. And complaining or pointing out what you don't like about a comic isn't toxic. That is not being negative on the fandom. That is expressing your feelings and inviting conversations, because maybe someone really did like it and they can explain to you, and maybe you'll end up liking it after that. Or you can just agree to disagree, but you both realize that you both love comics. So, I'm on my own side, but obviously if anyone, is going to attack, Chase or Ash or any of the people that I work with, and we're all friends, I'm always going to be there for them. But I hate the toxicity. It's ruining the experience and the fandom. But I do love the interactions with all the people that do love comics and bring their passion to it, without all the extra baggage and the not fun stuff like the doxing and the threats and all that stuff. Yeah,
that's a great point. I feel the same way. I think it's important to stand for what you believe in and for your friends, and that's really, really simple, And I hear certain creators talk about they'll throw the word loyalty around, and what they really mean is, I want you to back me even if I say something cruel. And I'm talking about a few individuals that won't throw out names there, but I see it happening often, and I know that's not what you're talking about here. I know that you're talking about simply being true to yourself and your friends and stating your values when it comes to it. If someone amongst our friends was to say something that really was against my moral values or what I felt, I know that we're also very, very immediate to just step up and say, hey, I don't agree with that. But we can agree to disagree. And that is the cornerstone of a conversation. And I think that we can be having that. And if we can have a conversation, everyone, not just as friends, but even as acquaintances, people that we barely know on the internet, then I think that can stop that circle of what everyone seems to call toxicity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting you brought that. We're not going to get into it. Yeah, we do have like a private chat where, a lot of the contributors to the channel, we sit there and we disagree every day.
Mm-hmm.
And we never
we do.
Each other. We don't threaten each other. Be like, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm moving on. And that's the way it should be. But
That's
know,
right.
but it's
Yeah.
always, Ash, Chase. I just want to say thanks for coming along for this conversation. It's very interesting. It's something I wanted to talk about. I knew that that you would be the perfect guy to talk about, toxicity and fandom and how it all relates to everybody. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.